Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. So the Browns are in training camp out in Berea. Everybody in the facility, take a look. Joe Flacco, one of the quarterbacks, in shorts, looking casual, walking in. The other of the veteran quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett, arrives in Berea, ready to work as well. Guys getting ready to block for them. Wyatt Teller, one of the offensive linemen, arriving in Berea. First open to the media training camp is tomorrow. There's Jerry Jeudy, ready to go to work and do his thing, catching passes from whoever wins the quarterback job. And, of course, Denzel Ward, the cornerback, arriving in Berea as well. Again, first practice open to the media as well as media availability from Coach Stefanski and the players is tomorrow out in Berea. We'll have some of that for you as well. Nick Shook, Greg Rosenthal on the Browns quarterback competition. This from NFL Daily with Greg Rosenthal.
The Browns quarterback situation comes down to a simple sentence I tweeted like a week ago. We posted a picture, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, of the four quarterbacks for the AFC North Browns training camp preview. And I just said, I'm sorry, but how do you not laugh at this picture? Because these are your options. Like, you got four of them. None of them are probably good enough to start for most teams, but they got to figure out and find one. So it's intriguing because if you like chaos and, like you said, popcorn movies, that sort of thing, you're going to get that in Cleveland, but it's not super encouraging.
Let's go through them. How many of them would be backups on most teams? Flacco probably would be a backup on more than half the teams in the league. He's, I think, a good backup, but he was freely available for not much money and no one wanted him. So that, for the most part, that says something. I don't think Kenny Pickett would be a backup on most teams necessarily. The Eagles dumped him. And then, you have Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, who are a third and a fifth round draft pick, wouldn't normally be counted on to be a backup.
The only thing I'd say, go back to 2023, and Kevin Stefanski won games with P.J. Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Who would be fifth and sixth in that quarterback list that you had there? So we'll see. That's why they play the games. Tony Grossi, a longtime Browns beat reporter, on what he believes the plans might be for the Browns and Shedeur Sanders this season.
I think the plans for Shedeur, you have to look at it as a 4-year plan, not a 4-week plan heading into the opening of this season. I don't think they feel the urgency to rush either of those guys in. They want to develop them over time. And one may develop quicker than the other. They probably think it'll be Gabriel because of all the extensive work they've done on him. That's why they drafted him higher. But I can see Shedeur spending a lot of this season inactive on Sundays.
It'll be interesting to see. And again, let's see how everybody looks once they put on pads relative to the quarterbacks, especially Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Nathan Zagura, Browns radio analyst, on Myles Garrett contract, its impact on the AFC North.
They set the bar and force people in their division to go up above it, and it's happened. And I'll tell you what, with the Bengals, with Trey Hendrickson, this deal, Myles, and then this one, coming off season where he led the NFL, I think it makes it even harder to see that one getting done. What's going to happen, Cincinnati is a fascinating study to me in the terms of they have everything there that they need to win a Super Bowl, but they don't operate their business in the way, and justifiably so, in the sense that their wealth is tied into, their wealth comes from the fact that they own the Bengals. So it's different in terms of the liquidity and the things that can be done. But I always have said, when they announced that 10%, you can sell 10% and get that influx of cash to private equity, I thought they would be the poster child for that. I thought that would allow them to still compete with some of these teams that have owners that are certainly more willing, like ours, for example, to be cash forward to allow rosters to be built a certain way. But, not only Shamar Stewart, you've got Hendrickson. It's an organization when you think about Burrow and Chase and T. Higgins and what they're able to do offensively and what their season was last year. I've been watching that quarterback show. I don't know if you guys watched season 2 yet, but Burrow is so likable, and you forget it. They almost beat the Ravens twice. They had the Chiefs down to one play, and then they don't even make the playoffs. And this is a team that should be going pedal to the metal. Let's win the Super Bowl now, and it feels like they're not. And I think the Myles deal followed by T.J. Watt is going to make it almost impossible for them to get a Hendrickson deal done.
Well, they haven't yet, and Adam Schefter tweets this out. NFL sack leader Trey Hendrickson, in search of a contract for the better part of 2 off seasons, will not report to training camp today with the rest of the Bengals. He told ESPN all along Hendrickson said he would not play under his current contract, and he is dug in and sticking to his word. He also said that the Bengals' current offer was atrociously undervalued, which is not what you want to hear from one of your best defensive players. Some news regarding Obo Okenrankwo, guy that the Browns released. He's signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, the same team that won the Super Bowl last year. So good luck to Obo with the Eagles. Guardians opened up a 4-game series with the Orioles yesterday. Tanner Bybee on the mound against Tomoyoki Sugano of the Orioles, and the Orioles took an early 3-0 lead. 3-run homer off of Bybee in the first inning, bottom of the first. Jose Ramirez ties it up with a 3-run homer of his own. 4th inning, game tied at 4. Carlos Santana, an RBI single. That made it 5-4 Orioles. Still 5-4 Orioles in the 5th. Bo Naylor the other way. And that one will find the seats in right center to tie it up at 5. 6th inning, Kyle Manzardo continues to hit the ball well. This one going to find the seats as well. 6-5 Guardians with the lead. Added on a couple, it's 8-5 Brian Rocchio. Out into left field, that'll bring 2 more in. 10-5 Guardians with the lead. Stephen Vogt talking about all the offense the Guardians had.
I felt like we took the last road trip and didn't slow down. You're going to run into good pitchers. We ran into Severino the other night, but Sagano's been pretty good. He was really good against us at their place. I thought we had a really good plan. We kind of took the split away from him early. Our guys were not following it under the zone, which is exactly what we talked about. And that's what I've really seen that trend. Our guys are buying into the plan and they are sticking to it. I heard, I think it was Kwani telling Jonesy, hey, stick to the plan, stick to they're talking about it. They're living it. So it's just been good to see us. Obviously I thought we could have had a lot more runs tonight. We left a lot of people on base, a lot of runners on third, less than 2, which isn't like us. We're very good in that situation, but we had 2-out clutch. We had a lot of 2-out clutch, opportunities. That Nolan's walk, Schnee's walk, Rocchio with the big hits that allows us to save some guys in the bullpen. So all these runs count.
Guardians now 1 game under 500. Game 2 of the series tonight. Joey Cantillo, Brandon Young will be the pitchers. Guardians now 3.5 out of the final wild card spot. They have 3 teams ahead of them as they try to get into that 3rd and final wild card spot in the American League. We're going to take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Mary Kay Cabot is up first. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Let's get right to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Dennis from Cleveland, and I'm a longtime Browns fan. I want to talk about the Browns quarterback situation and why I think Joe Flacco and Shedeur should be the only 2 quarterbacks who should be taken seriously. First of all, they keep talking about offensive coordinator Matt Canada being the reason why Kenny Pickett failed in Pittsburgh. Even though when he lost his job to Mason Rudolph, Pittsburgh's offense was way better, and they scored almost twice as many points. In drafting Dylan Gabriel, what makes them think Andrew Berry, who's a horrible drafter, drafting a quarterback under 6 feet makes sense? And there's only been 2 quarterbacks in the 105-year history of the NFL that's been good, and that's Drew Brees and Russell Wilson. Thanks for listening to me, and have a good day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, let's go about it this way here. Hey, Mary Kay asked, who do you think has the edge heading into training camp for the quarterbacks?
I still think that as we head into training camp tomorrow for the first open practice, open to the media, not to fans until Friday, but as we head in, I still think that Kenny Pickett has a slight edge because I believe that the Browns really hoped that he was going to seize the moment and win that starting job and buy them a little time so that they did not have to play those young players, those rookies early on in the season. But it's all going to be up to Kenny if he's going to be able to hang on to that. And I think he's going to get a lot of competition from Joe Flacco. I think Joe is still very, very much in the mix to start in week 1. And then I'm hearing really good things too about how Dylan Gabriel exceeded expectations in spring ball. And then we saw some really good things from Shedeur Sanders in the final 2 weeks of spring ball, which encompassed OTAs and mandatory minicamp. But I would say that right now, Kenny Pickett still has a slight edge, and that can change at any moment. What I'm interested to see is how did the quarterbacks process this offense in their break? How did they assimilate it, and how will they come back ready to go?
So I know you've written a series of articles how any of the four can win the job still. Just take us through a snippet of how each of these four guys could potentially still be the starting quarterback.
Well, we can start with Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco can win this starting job by just lighting it up in camp with those explosives. That is his superpower, those explosive plays. So if he's lighting it up with Jerry Jeudy and he's lighting it up with David Njoku and Harold Fannin and Cedric Tillman, that's going to go a long way towards him winning that starting job on opening day. What you give up with Joe that you gain in the explosives, you give up some of the quarterback movement ability. So he's not going to be running RPOs. He's not going to be taking off and running with the ball. He's not going to be doing as many of those things as Kenny Pickett can do. So, you would be not as creative. You're going to be a little bit more basic on your offense, but you can also potentially be more explosive. What you have to worry about, of course, with Joe are the interceptions, and he throws too many of them. He turned the ball over too much in Indianapolis, and the Browns have a good offensive line, so he's going to be protected, but he'll have to be because he's fairly stationary back there, and he's going to have to learn to hang on to the ball when he gets sacked.
When you look at Kenny Pickett, so how does he, and you mentioned he's a little bit more mobile, how does he win it?
With Kenny Pickett, that will be one of the things that Kenny does well. His superpower will be that mobility, the ability to run a more creative offense, to do some different concepts, to run some more of those RPOs, to run the ball a little bit more, and to just focus on some rollouts and some bootlegs and quarterback movement. That is what he does very well. He's also a good game manager, and he doesn't really turn the ball over much. Most of his interceptions in his career have come in his rookie season when he was still working out the kinks. He hasn't thrown many interceptions since that rookie season. And that's one of the things that the Browns really admire and like about him, the ability to protect the football. They gave it away far too often last year. They ended up bottom of the barrel in turnover differential. That's going to lose you a lot of games. And if they can get that turned around, then they should be able to win, I think, twice as many games as they won last year.
The other thing about Pickett that a lot of fans either don't know or don't want to recognize, he has 4 or 6 fourth quarter comebacks in his 15 wins. So there's a certain clutch thing that takes.
Yes, he does have that it factor. He's a gamer when it comes to that. I wrote that in my How Can Kenny Win the Job story. So yes, he does have that ability to do that. And, we will start to see better Kenny when he gets into more 2-minute drills in practice, when he gets into the joint practices against his former Eagles team, and of course against the Panthers, and when he gets into some games. And I think that's when he'll be able to improvise a little bit and maybe run some of those off schedule plays and things like that. So those are some of the things that he can do well.
The two rookies, I mean, they've got to make up some ground if they're going to win the job.
Yeah, they do, because they're not going to get as many reps as you would normally get if you're a rookie and you want to go out there and try to start week one. They're not going to get as many of those reps. So that's something to keep an eye on as we move forward here. But when we talk about Dillon Gabriel, the thing about Dillon Gabriel, his superpower, if you will, is just his processing speed and his computer-like brain. I keep hearing it over and over and over. There are other quarterbacks in the league that you hear about that can process like that, and that is supposedly what Dillon can do best. We'll have to see how it translates to the field and how it translates to the pro game. But if you remember, when we first asked Tommy Rees, what's the most important trait he looks in a quarterback, and he mentioned processing speed and decision making, and that is what sets Dillon Gabriel apart. So we'll have to see how that goes. They were very happy with his spring ball. Kenny and Dillon were tasked in the spring with taking on sort of the brunt of the installation of the offense. It was up to them to help figure out what was going to work in the new scheme and what could they throw out. So it might not have always looked efficient and as pretty as they hope it will look during a game, but nonetheless, this was part of the pruning process of the new playbook.
So let's turn our attention a little bit to Quinshon Judkins. A lot of fans have been critical of the Browns' research in getting draft picks the last several years that have some legal issues. I know you wrote an article, the Browns have taken steps to address domestic violence over the last 2 seasons and why there's more to do. Take us through that and your article there.
Well, real quick, if you don't mind, can I just dial it back to
Sure.
Shedeur, because I did get a chance to talk about what his superpower is and where he's at. But he did actually again come through in the last 2 weeks this season of spring ball in OTAs and the minicamp. And the thing that he did well and does really well is he's extremely accurate. He's very, very accurate, and he goes to the right place with the ball and he gets it there, and he throws a really catchable ball. I remember talking to him about that at his showcase, where he talked about the fact that, he can put more heat on the ball, but if a guy's not going to be able to catch it, what good is that going to do him? So he can vary his ball speed and vary his arm angles and different things. He's got nice arm talent, a good strong arm, and a very catchable ball, and very, very accurate. So that's his superpower, and he should be able to display and showcase that. Do we have time to get into Quinshon before we go to the next break, or do you want to go to break?
Yeah, let's go to Quinshon real quick.
Okay, so with Quinshon, he's not going to be ready for camp when it opens on Wednesday unless something unforeseen happens today. As of right now, the Browns are still gathering information on his domestic battery charge, and they want him to focus on that. They want to focus on that. The NFL is still investigating. So until they get all sides of the story, all aspects of the story, the Browns are not in a huge rush to get him signed, and he's not going to come to camp until he's signed. He's the only remaining draft pick that's not signed. So until that happens, he won't be here. And again, I suppose it could happen tonight. I suppose it could be an 11th hour thing where we show up on Wednesday and he is out there, but I don't really anticipate that happening. I think it might take a little while they work through this legal system, and then I think he will end up possibly going on the commissioner's exempt list, and then also probably getting suspended for multiple games this season.
So who else might not be ready to go once training camp starts again? I know you wrote a who's in, who's out for training camp.
Mike Hall, he's going to start the season on the physically unable to perform list. And what that means is they start out on that list and they can come off of that list at any time. So they're active PUP, and that means that they can pop off of there at any given moment. And I just don't think that they want to be super specific and oversell when Mike will be back. But they are looking forward to getting him back in there on the inside of that defense next to Mason Graham, their number 5 overall pick. We'll have to see how that goes. In the meantime, Malik Collins will do that. He'll be in there with the starters right next to Mason Graham. And then in terms of Deshaun Watson, he'll also start out the season on the physically unable to perform list. And again, he can come off at any time, but he's not expected to be able to practice until I would say sometime in October, November. And so he'll start the season on the reserve pup list. And then if it seems like he's ready at some point and they decide they want to open up a practice window on him, they can do that. They can also just keep him on pup for the rest of the season. So those are some guys. And then David Bell, we did not see David Bell in spring ball. We did not see David Bell in mandatory minicamp, and we will not see him at least for the beginning of training camp. He's not going to be out there. He's not ready to go yet. And I'm sure we'll find out more about that, but I don't know that he's going to be back anytime soon.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about what to expect at training camp, which starts tomorrow, open to the media. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Nathan Zagura, Browns radio analyst. What to expect from training camp this year?
I think you look at the Browns, and I think, Kevin Stefanski would be the first to tell you a lot of the things that they did last year in terms of how they used the time. Obviously, there wasn't the quarterback competition, number one, but number two, was a focus on player health. And then they had one of the most oft-injured seasons in the NFL. So I think that it's difficult to have success in any regard as it relates to injury. So he said, you know what? I think we're going to have longer practices. I think we're going to have more physical practices. I think you are going to see a different kind of training camp from the Cleveland Browns, not just because of the quarterback situation, but also because, you've got to come out ready to play AFC North football, Bengals, Ravens right out of the gate, and then the NFC North, Packers, Lions, Vikings, and then Steelers. I mean, your first 6 games are against teams that all won 10 or more games a year ago. And so you've got to be ready to go immediately. And so I think we're going to see a ratcheted up intensity. You've got to bring it in the AFC North. It's a physical brand of football, and the Browns, I think, are going to try to do that. Now, of course, that comes with some injury risk, but as I pointed out before, when they were trying to really have an eye towards minimizing those things, they were bitten by the injury bug anyway. So I think they're going to try to get this team hardened, get this team calloused, get this team ready, and then, as you pointed out, get as many reps in as possible so that you can really evaluate these quarterbacks. And when you're ready to make a starter, have a large amount of information that tells you, yeah, this is the direction we're going.
Mary Kay, do you expect this to be more physical, higher intensity, higher paced training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about that during OTAs and mini camp, that was definitely a point of emphasis for this season. Players have talked about it. Every single one of the coaches have talked about it, that they needed to ramp it up, that they needed to be tougher in every single way. So that is exactly what we've seen so far. And it is a different philosophy, but the Browns have completely overhauled their wellness staff, basically, and they're monitoring things, but they are going to run a tougher, more physical, faster-paced camp, and they hope that translates into a better season.
What are a couple of things you're paying attention to early in camp that you think are important?
Well, aside from the quarterback competition, which of course all eyes will be on that, there are a few other things to watch during this camp. And one of those is the third wide receiver position. I think that's a good battle to watch. I want to see what Deontay Johnson's going to do. You've got Jamari Thrash vying for time. He had a really nice spring. You have Mike Woods that's trying to remain relevant and get some playing time. So that's one interesting battle to watch. And then, of course, the defensive end spot opposite Myles Garrett. That's going to be another good competition with Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire and Joe Tryon Shoyinka. So that's going to be a nice battle to watch there. And they really need someone to step up and get at least close to double-digit sacks this year besides Myles Garrett. And then, of course, defensive back, that's always a very interesting position to see who's doing what, who's playing nickel, who's playing backup nickel. So I'm curious to see who some of those sort of back tier defensive backs are going to be, because we know who the starters are going to be for sure. And then, linebacker is interesting this year without Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in there. We know that Carson Wentz will be in there. I'm sorry, Carson Wentz. We know that Carson Schlesinger will be in there. That would be a note. Carson Schlesinger will be in there, probably starting. I mean, they're very, very excited about their number 33 overall pick. And then you still have Jordan Hicks. You've got Jerome Baker. You've got Diabate. You've got Nathaniel Watson. And so that's also a place to watch.
Who are you most anxious to see in pads? Once they put the pads on, what do you think your eyes will be drawn to and your attention will be drawn to?
Well, I think that Mason Graham, the number 5 overall pick, almost gets a little short shrift because of the 4-way quarterback competition. In a non-quarterback year, if there were no quarterback news and we knew who the starter was, then I think we would be talking more about the number 5 overall pick in the draft and how defensive tackle has become more of a premium position, and what's he going to do inside with Mike Hall, and how is he going to help Myles Garrett do his job even better. But there hasn't been as much focus on Mason Graham because of the QB competition. So I think that when you talk about the pads coming on, I'm looking forward to watching him.
You mentioned Mason Graham. How important is this rookie class overall? I mean, are the Browns seem like, to me, like they're counting on production from a number of rookies if they're going to be as good as they can be?
Well, they are. And Quinshon obviously was going to be a huge part of that. He's the heir apparent to Nick Chubb, and now there is an air of uncertainty over when he's going to be able to play. He was going to be that workhorse back. And now you're going to have Jerome Ford going out there and proving that he never should have lost his job in the first place, and that he can get the job done. And he'll pair with Dylan Sampson, their 4th round pick. And those guys can provide that 1-2 combo, at least in the early going, that Quinshon and Dylan were going to provide. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But I would say that that's an area to really focus in on, because I think it's going to help both sides of the ball if you can have that excellent running game.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll take a look at what fans and some of the experts expect from the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day, put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, how good he thinks the Browns can be this year.
It's impossible to know because every team changes throughout the course of the season. Injuries have a huge impact, whether they're injuries that happen to you or injuries that happen to the teams that you play. They're good enough to be a better than 5-win team. They're good enough to be a playoff team. It's just a lot of things that have to fall into place. And right now we don't know. That's part of the fun. We have no idea what's going to happen with any team. Now, I mean, the problem is, despite this age of parity that we now occupy, there's a small handful of teams that we suspect are going to be standing as the dust settles. So the Browns aren't one of those teams that we look at and say, oh, well, they'll definitely be there. But you can play your way into it. You know, just like they say you can play your way into prime time, you can play your way in to high-level contention. And, the Bengals in 2021, I thought there was no chance they'd make the playoffs, and they almost won the Super Bowl. The Texans 2 years ago, I would assume there's no way. I would have sworn, I would have bet, and I don't bet, and this is one of the reasons why you shouldn't bet. No way they make the playoffs, and they won the division. So it's not crazy, but when you look at the competition, you look at the other teams, you look at the division, you look at the quarterback situation with the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Steelers, yeah, I mean, it's all adding up to the Browns being last place.
Mary Kay, I think the thing that he touched on, I think, is pertinent. There's just a lot of questions, and a lot of it is young guys coming back from injury and health.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with it. But the biggest question, of course, is the quarterback play. And until we know who is going to be starting at quarterback and how they are going to perform in this season, not what we saw them do in any other season of their career, but what they are going to look like this year, it's really hard to say how the Browns are going to be. If you can't get good quarterback play, then you're going to have a tough time winning games. It's a really tough schedule. It's a really hard schedule. They're facing a lot of amazing quarterbacks this year and talented defenses, really good coaches and good teams that they're facing. They have to go over to London to play a game. They have, I can't remember now if it's like 5 of 6 on the road, I think it is at one point early on, which is just incredible. And so I just think that it can go either way. They have to try really hard to stay in the thick of it and not fall by the wayside in the first half of the season, because it's going to be a long second half if they falter early on.
I know you wrote an article about Myles Garrett. Can he top his Defensive Player of the Year season and make fans forget that trade request in the offseason?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon him to do so. And I think that we have seen Jim Schwartz and Jimmy Haslam both sort of throw down the gauntlet at Myles and challenge him to be the best leader that he's ever been, and Jim Schwartz challenging him to have his best career season ever after what he did in the offseason with his very public trade demand, which got, let's admit it, I mean, it really got ugly for a while there. So with him doing that, these guys are saying, okay, now you have to give us everything that you've got. The Browns gave him $40 million a year, and they want some return on investment. And I do think that he is capable of having his best career season. The thing with Myles is he's going to have to make sure that he can stay in the game, keep his head in the game, and stay as motivated as he possibly can, even if the Browns are out of it by late October. He's got to still play at that same level of intensity.
When you look at this defense, I've said this, I will be disappointed just in the pieces that they have that if they're not a top 10 defense. Do you think that's fair, or is that overshooting what you think this defense should be?
I think it can be. Once again, I think this defense needs to make more impact plays. This is a defense that they've got to try to get some interceptions. They've got to try to force some fumbles. They've got to bat down more passes. They have to be way more disruptive. They have to be way more active. They have to get more sacks. So if they can do those kinds of things and fly around more and hustle more, then I think they will be viewed as a fearsome defense. But so many guys have to step it up. Martin Emerson needs to bounce back. Greg Newsome needs to bounce back. He was very injured last year. A lot of these guys really need to pick it up a notch. And then you've got the two young guys in Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger who can really add a lot.
You mentioned a little bit about Deontay Johnson. Take us through the article you wrote. He was humbled. And take us through that article.
Well, he's going to need to be humbled to come back and become the receiver that the Browns are going to need him to be. And I've said this a couple of times before, but I think it also bears repeating. I thought he made a questionable decision in not showing up for organized team activities. He needed to learn the installation of the offense. He needed to get to know his teammates. He needed to get some timing down with Kenny Pickett. He said he worked out with a coach on his own, but that's different. That's different than being in camp with your new teammates trying to impress your new coaches and showing that you are all in and 100% committed. I didn't think that was a good decision. I think he's going to have to overcome that, not just in terms of perception and feeling towards him, but I think in terms of just getting up to speed on the scheme, the system, and his new personnel. So that's definitely something that that I think that we need to watch with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like he didn't realize the opportunity I mean, there's a job there with significant target share if you can go out and heck, be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Pro Bowl wide receiver, and they could use another guy like that to pair with Jerry Jeudy. And we know that he's already got some camaraderie with Kenny Pickett because they played together in Pittsburgh. But this is an opportunity for a Pro Bowl player to reestablish himself and save his career. So let's see if he can do it. Once again, he said all the right things when we talked to him in minicamp, but you've got to do all the right things too. And that was, I just thought it was just a questionable decision, not a complete deal breaker, but now he's got to kind of overcome that and make up for it.
So before I let you go, this is one of your Hey Mary case. If the Browns start the season poorly, do you think David Njoku gets traded, considering it's his last year of contract, and you have Harold Fannin, who, by all accounts, played pretty well in OTAs and minicamp?
Yeah, he did. Harold had a really, really nice spring. There's no question about it. But this is a 2 tight end offense. And the Browns are going to need 2 really good tight ends on the field most of the time. And so I see David not only not being traded, but probably getting extended at some point. Might not happen early on in the season. Maybe it'll happen by the trade deadline. But I see them wanting to hang on to him. He's talked about wanting to be back. They've talked about wanting to have him back. So at this point, I don't really foresee that trade.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight, Mary Kay. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Always great Browns coverage for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, you wrote an article about Quinshon Judkins' rocky start with the Browns. Take us through that and the thing that you tied it to as well that I think Browns fans are thinking off the rip.
Yeah, I mean, you drafted the guy, from Ohio State. Personally, I wrote, and I kind of liked Travion Henderson over Judkins, but I favored him getting one of those guys. With that said, that by the mere fact that they drafted him at the top of the second round, 36 overall, that's the highest asset Andrew Berry has used on a running back. Jerome Ford was the highest prior, and he was a 5th round pick. The fact that he drafted 2 running backs, one in the second, one in the 4th, tells you what they were planning on doing. Judkins is more of a power back. I think that rocky is an understatement. This is a big blow, in my opinion, to the Browns' plans. They're not going to talk about that, but on the onset of camp, he gets arrested. His status is really up in the air. There's no question they were planning on having him the first down, second down back, trying to get back to a power running game. And now, he could miss 5-6 weeks. If he's suspended for that, maybe you get something out of him in the second half of the season. But I look at Mike Hall last year, was suspended the first 5 games. And his rookie year was derailed. He had a couple injuries, but, it's hard to play catch up on the fly, especially as a rookie. If he comes back 5, 6 games in, and plus those first 6 games are when you really need him the most. You're playing 6 really good teams, 5 that went to the playoffs last year. So I think a rocky start is an understatement. And then you drafted him hoping he hits the ground running and makes everybody kind of forget about Nick Chubb. I mean, if Judkins is rushing for 100, 150 yards a game, and scoring a touchdown or two, it's easier to soften the blow with Nick Chubb not being there. Now, we don't know what Chubb's going to do in with the Texans, but especially if you see him running and producing with the Texans, you're going to say, wow, what a big mistake. The Browns had to feel that it was time to move on from him. But that's why I say it kind of rubs salt in the wound. The guy that you drafted to replace Nick Chubb is now likely going to be on the sidelines, probably when you need him the most. And his rookie year could really be a big question mark.
So you also did an article on 5 storylines. First one is all eyes on the quarterback. We'll take a look at the quarterback projection in a minute. You got the Schwartz factor as number 2. Take us through what you mean by that.
Well, when Schwartz was hired in 2023, I thought it was the most significant move they made that offseason. And it turned out to be a pretty good move. They were the number 1 defense in the NFL, and they went to the playoffs. Last year, they fell off. I will contend, and not making excuses, but that 1-6 start really, they were playing well in those first 7 games. In fact, I make the case they could have won 5 of the 7, especially a couple more. They held their opponent, I think 5 of those 7 games to 21 points or less. But if you remember, the Browns offense did not score more than like 18 points in the first 7 games. And that buried the team. They were 1-6. And I don't care what you say, that affected the defense, especially when the offense kept turning the ball over, and the defense finished, I think, 19th in the NFL. Not terrible, but not what you were expecting them to be. And so I expect them to rebound this year. I think that that's the quickest way to be relevant. They went out and showed you that they felt the same thing by using their top 2 picks, Mason Graham, Carson Schlesinger, probably 2 immediate starters they're hoping as rookies. And they feel that up the middle, if they can tighten up that running game defense and get some pressure on the passer inside, they can get back to being a top defense. Schwartz talked about the 2 things that dropped that hurt him the most last year was not getting off the field on 3rd down like they did in 2023, and the fact that they didn't take the ball away. They only had 12 takeaways. And the secondary really hurt them, only had 4 interceptions, none by the safety. So that's why I feel that their quickest way to be relevant is the defense to, get back to a top defense. They added Graham, they added Schlesinger, they added Malik Collins, and I think they're expecting a bounce back year.
So another one is the need for young receivers to step up, and will the offensive line be strong again? So those are the next 2. Take us through those.
Well, I mean, I wrote in the offseason, I thought wide receiver was the 3rd biggest need on this team. And Andrew Berry had addressed wide receiver every year in the draft since he's been here. Not high picks, 3rd round was the highest, but he didn't even draft a wide receiver this year, nor did he sign one as a free agent. At this time last year, your top 3 wide receivers were Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore. 2 of those 3 aren't here. Jeudy emerged, but what do you have behind him? You have a lot of young draft picks from the past, Cedric Tillman, Jamari Thrash, Michael Woods, David Bell, are all big question marks. They haven't done at the NFL level. They're really counting on Tillman to step up and be the number 2 receiver. Then you got a big question by Deontay Johnson. But I think those 4 drafted young veterans are really on the hook if the Browns are going to have a successful passing game. I think PFF recently ranked them as the worst wide receiver group in the NFL. So we'll see. But they're going to have to emerge, or you're going to have to go out and get, another veteran, especially if Deontay Johnson doesn't step up and make the most of his opportunity.
What
As
about
far as the offensive line,
Mm-hmm.
what's that?
Yeah, the line. Take us through that.
Yeah, I think that they're back to the wide zone scheme that they all were brought in to play. 4 of the 5 they're going to be 30 or over, so there's a little age. But I contend on the offense that the offensive line still is the strength. I expect, Bitonio, Teller, Posick, and Conklin, as long as they're healthy, to have a bounce back year and be able to provide holes. The biggest question, losing Judkins, will they be able to still run the ball effectively? But they can do the play action, whether it's Flacco or Pickett, and I think they can be successful. So I do think 4 of the 5 are in the last year of their contract, those veterans, and depending on how this season goes will depend if they have to go get a whole new group of offensive linemen or if they might be able to bring 1 or 2 of them back next year.
All right. The other storyline that you had in the article was trying to get special again, so that's the special teams. But before we go, take us through your quarterback projection. What you see as the quarterback and how you think that's going to lay out. That's the big question everybody's talking about.
Yeah, I wrote a story, went out this morning about who I project. If I look at my crystal ball, just from what I've seen, no inside information, but I do think that Joe Flacco, when it's all said and done, makes the most sense. The Browns have said they're not rebuilding. They plan, they intend to win. And if they, especially when you look at that first 6-game schedule, with 5 playoff teams, 71-31 record from those 5 teams last year, your season could be over in the first 6 games. If you get off to a 1-5 start, 2-4 even, and heaven forbid 0-6, your season is over, very similar to last year. I think the best chance to navigate the early part of the season is Joe Flacco. He's obviously not the long-term answer, but I think those veterans in the locker room that Andrew Berry talked to, the Myles Garrett, the Joe Bitonio, David Njoku, Jack Conklin, and so forth, Denzel Ward, they'll know, and they know that Flacco's been there, done that, and they saw what he did a couple years ago. I think he gives them the best chance to win. Now, that might not be the case after 5-6 games. If they're off to a good start, you stay the course. If they falter and things start to fall apart, you got plenty of time to turn it over to your younger guys. The key to me, Kenny Pickett is going to have a chance to win the job, but if he does not clearly win the job and they decide to go with Flacco, I think they would try to trade Pickett. He's in the last year of his deal, and another team could use a quarterback and they could get something for him. A lot of it depends on what they think of Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. If they have great training camps and they feel confident enough to have those 2 as the backup to Flacco, then I can see him moving Pickett. So, Andrew Berry's done that in the past. He traded Josh Dobbs, who was the backup. DTR moved into the backup. Wasn't a great move, but it's going to come down to what they think of Gabriel and Sanders. And since you have 2 rookies that are going to be on the team, I could see them trying to get something for them. If they can't, they might just keep all 4 and see how the early part of the schedule goes. And then if they want to see Pickett, turn it over to him, and then continue up to the trade deadline. I think they would move on from one of them, but I don't think it'll be the rookies. And so that's where I see it. I think Sanders will be Watson will be on the PUP list all year.
Fred Greetham, Senior Analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave. Thanks for talking to me.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. He is the Senior Analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take one more time out. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Former NFL defensive lineman and Cleveland native Mike Golick. His thoughts on the Browns' four-way quarterback competition.
Well, I mean, listen, the best thing for a team to do is know who their starting quarterback is as early as possible, and not have it go too long, because you need a leader in the huddle. I would have a feeling Joe Flacco is going to start the season. Listen, we know four quarterbacks aren't going to be on the roster, right? I mean, even if you're going to have three for an emergency, if you want to put one on the practice squad, remember they have to be cut, and then they go through 24-hour waivers. So they're not even guaranteed the clear waivers to make it onto the practice team. So it's going to be an interesting scenario.
Let's welcome in Chris Easterling. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Chris, we can debate for or not. I would agree, though, that you probably don't want this quarterback competition to go as long as it's probably going to go into training camp in the preseason.
My guess is, and we've talked about it, I think, a little bit before, I think that week in Philadelphia is sort of the line in the sand, I guess, for lack of a better term, because I think by the time they're done in Philly, they'll know whether it's Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco, and they'll also know whether Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders has improved enough and they feel comfortable enough to really make them, either, if not contenders for the starting job, and move them up the depth chart, so to speak, or at least move them and feel comfortable enough that they can make him a backup behind whichever one of the two experienced guys gets the job. So I don't think they want to make any decisions before they see them against somebody else. So I would imagine coming out of those joint practices, you'll have a better idea. And that week going into that last preseason game is when at least it should become obvious the direction they're going with this thing.
So training camp gets underway tomorrow with all the media availability. Players are there, as we saw earlier. You've done a bunch of camp previews, and this one I think is probably as important as any. Can the offensive line finally stay healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like 7 or 8 starting offensive combinations a year ago. The year before that, even if you take out that regular season finale in Cincinnati where Kevin rested everybody of import and just sort of started the backups because they were getting ready for the playoffs. The last 2 years, I think they've started like 13 or 14 different combinations. Something along the combined between the 2 years. So they need good health. I mean, I don't know how this season will turn out for this football team, but I know if they have another year where the offensive line goes through all these injuries, it's going to be another disaster. It's a great chance to be another disaster like it was a year ago. But if you got good health, I think maybe, with guys like Bitonio and Conklin and Teller and Postage and even DeJuan Jones, from what we've seen, I think you at least have a chance to at least climb out of that disaster that was last year and maybe get to a little bit more of respectability.
So another one of the position previews, and I'm curious, what do you think about the linebackers? I mean, JOK's not playing. We know that, and that's a huge loss. But when you look at these linebackers, what do you see?
I see a lot of young guys that they have varying levels of expectations for. You know, we've obviously seen what Mahmoud Diabate has done since, you know, he was an undrafted free agent a couple of years ago. He's been somebody who's gotten more and more, you know, responsibility on his plate. Winston Reed was a special teams guy last year that by the end of the year was seeing time because of the injuries and whatnot. Obviously Carson Schweissinger is the guy. I mean, he's sort of the key to the whole thing because they can say they didn't draft him with JOK in mind, JOK's situation in mind. But I think it's clear that he is going to be asked to be a lot of what JOK was. Maybe not everything JOK was, but they're expecting big things from him. And then you got Jordan Hicks, sort of. If they can get a healthy season out of Jordan Hicks, I think that's a guy that, you know, that's still a quality player who, you know, when he was healthy last year, was a quality player, a quality leader on this football team. And then you have the Devin Bush question, which, you know, he's got a pretrial hearing August 15th in Pittsburgh for, you know, his domestic violence case. And, you know, so I don't know where that situation goes. Does he go on the commissioner's exempt list? Does he ultimately, when it's all, you know, all settled, does he go on, you know, the suspended list? I mean, the process has to play out, but, you know, that's just another question mark with this group.
You know, we've seen, and we showed it a little bit earlier in the show, there are some outlets that are ranking the Browns roster among the worst, like 31st out of 32 teams. Is that, it seems kind of bizarre to me. A year ago, they were almost universally ranked in the top 10.
It's funny how, you know, one year to the next it changes, but, you know, there are arguments for, you know, in spots you see and you squint and you do see talent, but it's unproven talent. It's hoping that Mason Graham hits. It's hoping Carson Schweissinger hits. It's what version of Grant Delpit are you getting? What version of Martin Emerson are you getting? What version of Greg Newsome are you getting? You know, we talked about Ronnie Hickman before and what they need out of him at the safety spot. It's DeJuan Jones. Is he healthy or not? You just don't have enough data there. And then you look at the other side of it, you got a lot of the talents they're in their 30s. I mean, they're all, you know, they're all older guys who, you know, are you know, they're sort of rounding the corner into the, you know, the backings of the careers. And then you have these two kind of in their prime, middle of their prime, all pro guys in Denzel and obviously Myles. So I understand it because, you know, outside of, you know, a handful of guys, I mean, there's just a lot of questions about this roster, even for the guys who are quote unquote established guys like Batonio, Teller, Conklin, who, you know, all of, you know, have, you know, various health and or age concerns around them.
Yeah, and again, the quarterback penalizes it as well because you got four of them and you don't know. So how concerned are you about the secondary? And we'll include safeties and cornerbacks. You mentioned Ronnie Hickman. It's an undrafted free agent that you're counting on to be the free safety. Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome coming off rough years.
It's probably one of the lower concern spots, honestly. Obviously because you have Denzel. Obviously because we have seen versions of Grant and Martin and Greg and you know, I think I mentioned Denzel already. I mean, put him in a completely separate category. But the other guys, they're guys that you've seen versions of them where they're good football players. And then with Ronnie, even with Ronnie, you know, he's been put in big spots before because of, you know, his rookie year, he was sort of thrown to the fire as a starter because they had so many injuries at the safety spot. And even last year, he was basically a dual starter alongside Juan Thornhill. So, you know, I'd like to see the number. I think if there's there's something about the secondary I have concerns about. It's really, can they make plays? Because if they don't make plays, if they're not playmakers and create turnovers and do all that, then this defense is going to struggle. 2 years ago, the secondary and the defense as a whole created turnovers, and they were one of the best in the league. This last year, they did next to none of that, and we saw the results. So slightly concerned. It would be of all the groups, it'd be one of the lower concerned groups I have. But there's obviously questions that they have to answer.
Chris Easterling, appreciate you taking some time. Thanks so much for the insight. Thanks very much, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Git.
Chris Easterling, make sure you check him out. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Always really good stuff. And we appreciate him taking some time as things get underway. Media availability for training camp begins tomorrow. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.